Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so happy you have joined us today, and I think you will be too after the show is over, because you will learn a lot about fresh fruits and vegetables, how to select and store them, how to prepare and cook them, and surprising facts about their history and origin. We hope it inspires you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, not only for your health, but also for your delight and pleasure as you explore their amazing world of taste and delicious flavors. Eating more of them will transform your life in so many positive ways. So settle back, relax, and get ready for another delicious adventure with the Produce Buzzers. Greetings, Produce Buzzers podcast fans. Welcome to another delicious episode of the Produce Buzzers podcast. I'm Edwin Stepp, your host and executive editor of ProduceBuzz.com. I'm joined once again by Teresa Nolan, the president and founder of Produce Buzz, along with Rick Stepp and Cynthia Benedetto, both contributing editors to Produce Buzz. Well, Produce Buzzers podcast fans, July is National Watermelon Month. And this weekend, we celebrate American independence. And watermelons are always on the table at the 4th of July parties. So we're going to celebrate them in this week's episode. Mark Twain once wrote, "To taste watermelon is to know what the angels eat." I don't know much about angels or what they eat, but I'm inclined to believe him on that one. During the hot summer days of July, there is nothing more refreshing and delicious as a nice cold slice of watermelon. As a kid, there was no greater treat than to see my dad come home from work carrying a big watermelon. He would set it down on the picnic table in our backyard, and we would all gather around as he sliced it up into half-moon slices for us to devour. But watermelons were not always so sweet and delicious. When the Egyptians grew and harvested them about 5,000 years ago, they were quite a different fruit in taste and texture. We're going to learn about that and lots of other very interesting facts about watermelon from our very special guest joining us on the show today. Our guest is a seasoned veteran of the produce industry and has helped promote, market, and merchandise watermelons for over 25 years. She works for the National Watermelon Board, helping them to increase consumption of this delicacy. What a great job that must be. This week's guest is Sheila Carden. Sheila started her career in the travel industry, doing outside sales for a travel agency. She eventually opened up her own travel agency with a partner. But later she sold the agency and became a sales rep for a hotel and casino on Grand Bahama Island. But when her father asked her to help him with his produce business, preparing and giving educational seminars to retail grocery chains, teaching them all about fresh produce, she gave up the travel industry for the produce industry. And as she says, she never looked back. Sheila loves fresh fruits and vegetables. She's represented a lot of different fruits and vegetables through her career, from peaches, plums, and nectarines, to avocados, to kiwi, to mango, to asparagus, sweet corn, tomatoes, sweet potatoes. And now she's working exclusively for the National Watermelon Board. Sheila served on the executive board of the Southeast Produce Council for 10 years, and she received the Lifetime Achievement Award from that organization in 2017. Well-deserved. As we told you, Sheila has represented several various fruit and vegetable commodities, but today she has her watermelon hat on to tell us all about them. Sheila, thank you for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to get to watermelons very soon, but first, tell us a little bit more about your background. I want to hear a bit more about you. You said to me that after your father retired, he ended up back in the produce business. What did he do originally in the produce business? What did he retire from? And when he returned to the business, what was he doing then?
He retired from a company that's now SuperValue.
They own grocery stores, right? And they supply grocery stores?
Yeah, they do.
Right.
And a distributor. He was a consultant for Farm Fresh. And then somehow a rep agency out of Seattle got him to represent a honey board, and then later California peaches, plums, and nectarines.
Oh,
And at that time, I was still a rep for a rental car company and a hotel casino. And so since he didn't like that, I started helping him. I did not know that it was his plan all along to get me into produce. So I kind of got into
an
it.
evil plan.
I know, a little bit at a time, but it was the best thing that could have happened to me. There's nothing like produce people.
Right. That is true. You've got so many years in the produce business with so many different commodities. We could have talked about them all today, but we're going to talk about watermelon. First of all, tell us, what is the function and the mission of the Watermelon Board?
It's to increase the consumption of watermelon. It represents the growers, and just to educate. Normally people know what to do with a watermelon, which is different from an avocado or a mango. It's a small organization for the amount of what they do. If you go on our website, watermelon.org, it's amazing what all we do. They're on all social media. They do a lot with different recipes. They are, our main focus now is, they call it UTWW. So if you see
UTWW.
Yes, it stands for use the whole watermelon.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So they want to get nutrition. Watermelon is such an easy thing to represent because most people love it.
Yeah.
Retailers know what to do with it. Okay. Watermelon is kind of an impulse buy most of the time. So lots of times it's just getting them to pay attention. And if they read something in an in-store magazine or see a heart healthy label or logo in an ad, that can inspire them.
Let's go back to this UTWW. I had some questions about that today because I did notice on your website the encouragement of people to use every bit of the watermelon. Can you tell us about that?
As far as using the whole watermelon, there's the flesh, the juice, the rind. People have been making smoothies, watermelon, strawberry milkshakes, frozen pops. They know how to use the flesh and they know how to use the juice, but they don't necessarily know how to use the rind. And so there's so many ways to use the whole melon, from grilling to make a salsa, to make a side dish, a salad. But to get them to use the rind, which is really good for you, that you can do such things as stir fry. Wow. Watermelon rind pickles are absolutely delicious. My aunt used to make them. Yeah. And
that's a real Southern dish. I remember.
It is, but they're normally very crunchy and just have a taste all their own. Yeah. But definitely, taste like a pickle. Right. But for the rind, if you're going to use the rind, you leave a little bit of outside ring of the pink in it. And then if you go on our website, watermelon.org, you can go, you'll see, they have a picture on there of how many ways to slice a watermelon, whether it's a chunk or a ball, watermelon balls, or watermelon cubes, or strips, or wedges. You click on that and it will show you exactly how to cut them to get the most out of your watermelon. Right. But the rind is really good in stir fry.
That's interesting.
Then, and
I'd heard of watermelon rind pickles, but I never thought about them using a stir fry. You said even salads. That makes sense too.
I take the rind of the watermelon and cut it up and substitute it for cucumbers. If you think of it as a cucumber when you're eating it in a salad, it actually tastes better.
Rick, that's great. I wish I had a prize to send you, because that's very smart.
Well, they're related to cucumbers, aren't they? They're in the same family. They look and smell a little bit alike when you cut them open. I think sometimes.
I started to experiment with that when I read how good the rinds are for you. The nutrients in the rind.
They are. We had a big family with lots of cousins. So I meant, and actually they call watermelon a happy fruit because people think of togetherness or nostalgia, memories that they used to have of their family and friends.
Yeah.
And I remember it used to be the long watermelons, the long seeded ones.
Right.
And you would cut it lengthwise, and then each child would get a sliver of that. And I can remember eating it down at the rind because you didn't want, you might not get seconds, and you wanted to get every bit of that. And it was also crunchy near that part of the rind, so.
Yeah, it can be very refreshing.
And my wife grew up in northern Minnesota, family of 9 kids. And when they got a watermelon, it was very special, like you were mentioning. And so they ate it right down to the rind, everything. And she came south in North Carolina, where I live, where watermelons are abundant and cheap. And she went to one of our family reunions, and she was eating it right down to the rind. And somebody pointed out, "Look, she's eating the rind of the watermelon," and everybody was laughing at her.
But Sheila, you said when you're going to use it in other ways, it's best to leave a little bit of that pink on it because it probably helps.
Yes, if you're going to stir fry it.
Yeah.
Or it's best to just leave a sliver of the pink in there.
Yeah.
And of course you peel it. You don't
slice it really.
Yes, to leave some because it makes it more appealing to look at.
Yeah. Now you said you peel it, you take the outer skin off of that before you stir fry it.
Is that take the outer skin? Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
You would cut that away. The green part you would cut away.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you use the seeds, Sheila?
Use the what?
Seeds. Can the seeds?
The seed?
Mm-hmm. The seed. The watermelon
mostly
seeds.
Everybody's buying seedless watermelons. And when you say seedless, that means you don't have the black mature seeds in there. You have like the shell of the seed, the white one that didn't mature, and they are completely edible.
And those white ones are not actually fully developed seeds.
They're like the shell.
The shell. Okay, got it. Now, I spent 2 summers in China when I was in university in the 80s. And one thing they sold on the streets there was roasted watermelon seeds, the black seeds. And they were
like pumpkin seeds.
Yeah, they were delicious. They soak them in some kind of salt brine to get them really salty, and then they roast them. And they were really popular. And
I imagine they would be really good. I haven't made those, but I bet they are good.
They were good. I haven't had them since I was in China. I've never seen them anywhere else. But I've always thought about that and thought, I should try to make some of those. I did find a recipe for that today. Actually, I was kind of looking to.
Now, there's a recipe on our website for roasted watermelon rinds.
Oh,
which looks really good.
I bet that is good. And you said you could grill it as well.
You can grill watermelon. Yes, you can.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay. So how did we get seedless watermelons? How did that happen?
The seedless watermelons, they're a hybrid. They were produced about 50 years ago, maybe a little more. A seedless watermelon is made by crossing male and female flower, male pollen and a female flower. And so it's incapable of producing its own seeds. It's similar to a mule being produced by crossing a horse and a donkey. It's just simple crossbreeding, but it's not genetically modified.
Right. I like the seeded ones as well. Those were very delicious. They seem to have some great flavors, but it's really nice not to have to spit all those seeds out.
I know. You don't find many seeded watermelons anymore. Right. I think it's just about less than 10% of maybe 8%, 8 to 10% is seeded now.
Yeah, probably mostly small, locally grown farms are producing those, I would assume.
Could be.
Not on high commercial production. What else can you tell us about the history of the watermelon? We touched on it very briefly. Our listeners like to hear the histories, especially ones that have interesting history, and I think watermelon does. I mentioned that the Egyptians were the first to have known to actually cultivate them rather than just coming from the wild. What can you tell us about their history?
Well, you were right in the beginning because they are traced back to 5,000 years ago in Southern Africa. And you mentioned that it was a little bit different. Back then, it was a tough, tolerant fruit, and it could store water really well for the tribes crossing the Kalahari Desert. So they used it kind of like a canteen. And they were brought to America sometime in the 16th century.
Oh, very good.
There between 200 to 300, closer to 300 varieties now raised in the U.S. and Mexico.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. And now what I had read, and I've seen some of these still life art pieces from, hundreds of years ago, and of watermelon cut open. And it really looked quite different than what we have today. But I guess it took hundreds of years for them to cultivate them to what we have today. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really interesting how different they look. They didn't look very appetizing to me on those old still lifes. But I guess the main purpose for those ancient peoples was just a source of water rather than an enjoyable fruit, right?
Yes, and they were a pretty tough fruit,
Yeah, right.
Could take the weather.
But we are so glad now that through all that hybridization and cultivation, watermelons are more than just a source of water. They are a delicious treat. But sometimes you pick one, you get it home, you cut it open, and it's just not what you thought it was going to be, not as good. So can you give us some tips on how to choose a watermelon to make sure it's the best one in the bunch at the market or at the grocery store?
I think there are a lot of old wives' tales out there about
right.
how to choose a watermelon. Different farmers have different techniques. I know I go to watermelon stand and I see them slap the melon or thump the melon. Or if you thump it and you hear a tenor sound, which I could not differentiate. But the best 3 ways to pick out a watermelon is when you pick it up, you look it over, and you don't want it to have any bruises or cuts or dents on it. And then you lift it up. Well, you want it to be heavy for its weight. That's another thing because it's 92% water. And then you look, when you turn the melon over, you're going to look for a creamy yellow spot on the underside. And that spot is where the melon has actually set on the ground and ripened in the sun. Sometimes they call that a ground spot. But a white spot would mean that it was picked before it was fully ripe.
Oh.
So a creamy yellow. It's not a dark color, just a creamy yellow.
Right. Oh, that's
and
great.
If that increases your chance of picking out a good melon. I have good luck if I use those 3 steps, and we call it look it over, lift it up, and turn it over.
Okay. Very good. You talked about these wives' tales. We had several fresh produce markets in North Carolina when we were growing up. That was also part of my dad's business. And we sold a lot of watermelons in the summertime there. And people would come in with all their different ways of trying to. Did you ever see the one where you take a straw from a broom and put it on top of the watermelon, and if it moves?
No, I haven't.
There were people who would swear by that.
Like a compass needle?
Yeah, more like a divining rod, I think is more. So you get a straw, pluck it out of a broom, a straw, and they would balance it on the top. And if it moved, it was supposed to be ripe. If it didn't move, it wasn't ripe.
Oh,
you've never heard of that?
Oh.
For good reason.
Yeah.
Yes. And sometimes they go by how many fingers are between the stripes or how wide the stripes are. And so much of all that has to do with the variety.
Yeah.
Maybe not whether it's ripe or not.
And if it's one that doesn't have any stripes, then you're really in trouble.
You are. Yes. Not all of them have stripes. You're right. Yeah.
I haven't had a bad watermelon. I haven't had a terrible watermelon in many years.
And I agree with Rick. There were many years ago, it was hit or miss. There was one guy we bought watermelons from who said, the only way you can tell if the watermelon is good is by cutting it open. But in those days, and I think it goes to exactly what Rick's point is, and I'm sure the Watermelon Board has had a lot to do with this, improving the growing practices, so that now, like Rick, I have not had a bad watermelon in many, many years.
I've had some that are bland, but I've never had one that I just had to throw away.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Farming has just gotten so sophisticated.
Yeah.
But it's still the climate, the soil, the sun, the rainfall, right. Like you can have a same variety from California and Florida, and it might taste a little different.
Yeah.
But it would be because of those conditions normally.
Right. They're still at the mercy of Mother Nature. What's the best way to store watermelon and keep it fresh, and how long will it last?
Once it's cut from the vine, it has a shelf life of about 3 to 4 weeks. And then when you bring it home and it's cold, I usually put it in the refrigerator. If I bought it from a fruit stand with no refrigeration, you can leave it on your counter. But once you cut it, you would, it would have a shelf life. It would taste good no longer than a week. And you would be sure and cover it with either a saran wrap or put it in a plastic container that would keep it airtight. If you're going to freeze it, one thing we recommend to do is like a cookie sheet. You take it and you put wax paper down, and then you put the watermelon on that and then freeze it. And that's good to use for, smoothies, cocktails, any kind of diffused water. But I wouldn't freeze watermelon and take it out to eat plain by itself.
Right.
Because I think it could change the texture and a little bit of the taste.
Yeah, probably.
But
it does be mealy,
just like ice cubes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Oh, that sounds good. Freezing. I don't know that I've ever frozen watermelon, but that sounds like a good plan. if you can't use it up in time. And I guess if you buy a cold watermelon and come home and you can't get it in your fridge, it's best to cut it up and do something with it, get it back in the fridge.
Yes, it's not gonna, it's not gonna change that much.
Right. Okay.
That's my case. I don't have room in my refrigerator to store the watermelon, so I butcher my watermelon. I cut it. I wash it good. I cut it up. I cut all the quote unquote substitute cucumber rinds, cut them up, put them in a plastic container, and then I put all the melon itself in chunks in a container so that I can fit it in there. So, but if you got a big refrigerator, why go to that much trouble?
Yeah.
Right. That's what I do too. Usually I do that anyway, whether it's cold or not. I like to get it all cut. I like to eat it in chunks now, and rather than messy slices.
It makes it easier to go in there for a snack too.
Right.
Quick snack.
Yes. Yeah.
If you cut up all that watermelon, cut up a whole watermelon, you have a tremendous amount of fruit on just a normal average size round seedless watermelon. And, sometimes they can be kind of pricey, especially when the season isn't in full swing. But really, it's for the amount of fruit you get out of a whole melon, it's got to be one of the best values in the fruit category by cost per pound. Wouldn't you agree?
They are. They're number one on the list of cost. And normally the average cost would be about 17 cents
per
serving.
Per serving. Okay. And a serving is a half a cup. So 17 cents for a half a cup of watermelon. Great deal. Yeah, it's very, sometimes in the winter I'm reluctant to buy them because I think they may not be as good, but I'm sure they are now. They're usually the same varieties we see in the summertime. But the price is a little higher than I'm used to. But now hearing that, I'm not going to avoid buying watermelons in the wintertime.
Yes. And one thing too, in the wintertime, you see a lot of pre-cuts.
Oh, that's
or
right.
A quarter of a melon wrapped. And the good thing about that is you can see the quality of the melon. You can see the actual flesh.
That's another good point. I have done that. I'm glad you brought that up for our listeners. A good tip, because if it's cut in the store, they're probably cutting it from the same whole watermelons they're selling whole. Is it true? I mean, it may or may not be.
Some retailers cut them themselves. Some use a different company to do it.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll go look at the cut watermelon before I pick up one of the big ones, just to kind of see if it looks. And sometimes I've even bought a small serving to taste it. Then, but as Rick said, it's rare that I have gotten a bad melon in many years. So not
and lots of times when in the winter, I will use like watermelon in recipes.
Oh,
like salsas, things like that.
Oh yeah, watermelon salsa is great. I've had that a few times. I've never made it.
We have a recipe for fire and ice salsa, watermelon fire and ice salsa.
What's that?
That is probably one of my favorites.
Tell us what's in that. Watermelon, of course. Must be some hot peppers.
Yes, yes. Definitely watermelon. Let's see, green pepper, lime juice. I love cilantro, so put cilantro in there. And then green peppers, jalapeno peppers, and then green onion.
Right.
So it'd be green peppers, green onion, and then jalapeno peppers, and then cilantro and lime juice. To me, it is so refreshing.
Yeah.
And it's got a little kick to it. It's a different type of salsa. It's still got a crunch to it. It's just, to me, very refreshing. And that's on our website as well.
Right. I've had that before. It is good. And I guess the watermelon is a substitute for tomato, ultimately, isn't it? Much sweeter.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah. Like in a regular sauce. Sorry, I wasn't clear about that. A regular salsa would have tomatoes. You don't put tomatoes in the watermelon sauce, I don't think.
No, you don't. I wouldn't advise that.
It might be okay, but I've had some great watermelon salads where watermelon was at the center of salads. And sometimes they would be tomatoes in those salads. But those are really great watermelon salads.
Watermelon. I mean, if you go on our website, watermelon has some great salad recipes. They have like a watermelon Greek salad that's even got kale in it, red onions, cucumber. That's really good. And then they do like caprese salads, rather than the tomato and the mozzarella, they'll use slices of the watermelon.
Basil and the mozzarella.
And that brings me to one point too, is when you're trying to get your children to eat watermelon or to eat more produce in general, you can slice a watermelon and then use a cookie cutter to cut it out. And the kids can put sprinkles or yogurt or whatever on the top of it. The same thing with a donut. You'll have the hole in it and that ring, so you can make it look like a donut. And sometimes that's fun for kids to eat. So if I was going to make that caprese salad, that's probably how I'd make it the size of a tomato.
I got it. So you get a fun shape there and combine it with some other healthy veggies, and the kids will probably eat it up and start to like those other veggies.
But I do, for some reason, I really love watermelon with balsamic on it, like you would use in the caprese salad.
Yeah.
But we do some skewers with say what chunks or cubes of watermelon and cubes of feta cheese, and then basil and the balsamic vinaigrette drizzle. And there's something different to have if you're having people over and they don't take much time.
That does sound good. I like that. Feta, did you say feta cheese?
Feta.
Yeah.
We use feta. Goes really well with watermelon.
And it stays on the skewer probably better than other things. So that's good.
It does.
Now, we were going to talk about watermelon nutrition. What are the most prominent nutrients in watermelon and watermelon rind?
Okay. There's so many benefits to watermelon. I'll just get on a roll and you tell me when to stop.
Okay, keep going.
It is a great hydrant. Like I think I mentioned earlier, watermelon is 92% water. So it's good for like after it would be a great post-workout recovery to eat, because it's good for your heart and vascular system. Its vitamins would be A, B6, C, potassium. It's got 0 fat, cholesterol, and sodium. As far as red vegetables, that's where you get the lycopene, which is an antioxidant. And so the watermelon is the leader of lycopene. Also tomatoes, anything red fruits and vegetables, you would find lycopene in as well.
Very good. Very nutritious. And about that hydration, you should drink a lot of water, but if you're only drinking water, it can actually deplete your body of other things, electrolytes. So fruit and watermelon would be top of the list to rehydrate with, because you're putting back those electrolytes for the most part, rather than draining them when you drink and then eliminate.
You shouldn't get all your water. You should get all your water from just drinking water. You should get it from fruits and vegetables as well.
Right. It's brings much more to you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
As it hydrates. So, okay. What's the largest watermelon ever grown, Sheila? How much did it weigh?
Okay, this will shock you. Let's see. In 2013, it was in Tennessee, and the largest watermelon was 350.5 pounds.
Oh my!
Wow,
that is so gross.
I don't.
How many people did that feed?
Probably Tennessee and Kentucky.
That's good. Wow. And what was the variety? Do you know what the variety was?
I have no idea what the variety
probably
is.
One of those.
But that's a fluke. It was probably just to get in the Guinness World Book of Records or something. But a 350-pound watermelon, I doubt any of us will ever see that in our life. But I think it's crazy.
I hope. Fingers crossed.
I know. Yes. Or trying to pick it up and see if it's got a yellow ground spot on it. That could be a little difficult.
You just have to roll it over.
Have to be an Olympic weightlifter to put it on. Another very interesting use of watermelons is as art. Tell us about that, Sheila.
You can carve a watermelon so many ways, from baskets to animals like owls, bunny rabbits. You can use the shell of your watermelon as a bowl. That's also on our website, but you'll see some real interesting carvings, and some of them are simple. They're not that difficult. But if you're gonna carve a watermelon, it's easier to manipulate at room temperature.
Okay, that's a good tip. Yeah, I saw some of those carvings on your website, and I've been some of the produce shows you mentioned, PMA, Produce Marketing Association, their show. They usually have somebody there carving melons, and
yes, it's their show. They're amazing.
Yeah, what they can do with
just amazing.
So go visit that website to see some of those beautiful creations. Who knew watermelon could be a medium for art?
I know. Are any of y'all into NASCAR?
Not me.
No.
Just a little.
Okay, I'm not into it either, but I did have a wonderful experience. One of our watermelon growers, he's like a 8th-generation watermelon farmer. His name is Ross Chastain, and every time he wins a race, he smashes a watermelon. And he keeps it protected in his car in case he wins, so it doesn't get all knocked around on the floorboard. But that's kind of cool, because the watermelon, and that the car is painted like a watermelon, and he's very good.
He's from North Carolina.
Where is he from?
I think he's from North Carolina.
Yeah.
What was his name again?
Ross Chastain, Chastain. And what's so good about it is when you see him being interviewed for winning a race, he always talks about watermelon, and he's such a good spokesperson, and he does it so smooth. He came to Richmond, and we took him to the children's hospital here. He dressed up in his uniform and everything, or his, I guess, uniform, and the kids just had a fit. But he's a great spokesperson. So if you see that watermelon car, be sure and root for it.
I'm going to look for it now. Does the National Watermelon Board sponsor his car? Those sponsorships are pretty expensive.
No, we wouldn't. No, we couldn't do that.
So they still have a watermelon queen then?
We still have watermelon queens, yes.
Yes.
And a watermelon queen, for those that don't know, you might see them in grocery stores or see them in doing something related to public relations. they have a watermelon queen for each growing area, and then they have a national watermelon queen where all the growing areas compete for the national queen. And I always thought it was like a beauty contest until I judged it. I've judged it a couple times. Those girls are sharp as tacks, and most of them are going into PR or media, but they're great spokespersons too. So for them giving out watermelon, they got some, I was going to say they got some attention, but I don't know if it was the girls. It was probably the watermelon, don't you think?
Absolutely. I don't know. What were they wearing?
They always have to dress appropriate with dresses, and they can't be short, but they have they're all attractive and they're all so sharp. And usually they're in the watermelon industry, which is good.
Oh, okay.
Is part of the swimsuit competition still combined with the watermelon eating contest?
No, actually, they do seed spitting contest.
Oh God!
Of
course.
But no, I meant they do what?
You're telling the truth. They actually do have a seed.
Yes.
Part of the competition?
If you didn't spit your watermelon seed very far, that doesn't mean you don't get chosen. That was just kind of like a little side trap. But
that's funny.
I would not be a very good contestant for that.
No, I would not either.
Do you know much about the history of how they used to load watermelons?
How they used to load watermelons? No. I mean, I know everything done by hand.
When we bought watermelons off the Columbia Farmers Market, they still weren't using bins and forklifts. They actually had to load them by hand.
Yeah.
And I've looked online to see if I could find maybe a YouTube video. A lot of the African American kids would come there and they would load watermelon for a penny a piece. And they would,
oh my goodness.
And they would sing while they do it. So like if you pulled up with your truck and said, I need 500 watermelons, they'd hand load them and stack them and count them out. And they would sing while they did it. And it would be something like, I've got 1, number 2, you got 3 here, number 4. And they sing while they were loading them. And the next thing you know, you got 500 watermelons on the truck.
Oh my God. A penny a watermelon.
Yeah.
Wow.
They'd line up because, usually it'd be tractors and trailers, so they had a long way to go. So there'd be, depending on the load, but, so I remember having them loaded, and we'd have as many as 10 guys forming a chain, tossing them, just as fast as they could go, man. They would toss them fast. And I don't ever remember seeing anybody drop one in all those times I was there.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was like a sport, athletics.
And a lot of times they get into harmony while they were counting. And that was really something to hear.
I sure wish I could see a movie or a video of that, but.
I noticed on your website that you state that most of the watermelons are loaded by hand out of the field, picked and loaded by hand out of the field. So they still have to be handled by hand somewhere, even though they're going into bins now, as opposed to being handled everywhere along the whole chain, at least at the beginning. So it's a lot of hard work goes into those watermelons. Okay, we're running out of time, but Sheila, we cannot let you or our listeners escape the torture we inflict upon them in one of their favorite segments on Produce Buzz Podcast. Here we go. So, Produce Buzzers podcast fans, it's time for your favorite segment on the Produce Buzzers podcast. Yes, it's time to punish you with another home grown. Teresa, what's the pun for this week's episode?
Well, do you know what happened to the scientist who heard that watermelons were the happy fruit, and he got the idea that because dogs were such happy animals, that if he would crossbreed his dog with a watermelon, that he would get this really great thing. And what do you think he got?
Okay, so this farmer recognizing that watermelon is the happy fruit and his dog is so happy, he crossbred them and came up with a creation that was what? Can we guess?
Watermelon retriever.
What?
What was it?
Watermelon retriever.
Nope.
No, I can't even guess on this one. Teresa, can you give us another hint?
No, you gotta. We have to hear from Cynthia. What do you think,
I
Cynthia?
have no idea. And you said water dog?
No, just a dog.
No. Did Rick say water
Water
dog?
dog.
Water dog. Oh,
Yes.
that'd be good. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, when the farmer scientist crossed the happiest fruit, the watermelon, with his dog, it backfired. He just got melancholy.
Oh, yeah, we didn't know what kind of dog. Yeah.
That's
No, but if
really
she-
good. I would have
If
never thought of
she had
that.
told us it was a collie, but we probably would have got it.
Yeah, I didn't want to give you too much info.
Oh, we didn't groan. Everybody
You are the pun
groaned.
master.
The happy fruit became melancholy.
Yes.
It's really good that you know that watermelon's kind of known as the happy fruit, actually.
Yeah. Well, I learned that from you, Sheila. That was good.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
There you go.
And I learned it off your website, which is a fantastic website.
It's an
Listeners.
awesome website.
You got to go visit it. It's one of the best for the produce commodities, I think, out there. A
I
lot of
think so, too.
information
They work
on it.
really hard on keeping that updated and
It's beautiful.
just
some
the way
great
it's
videos.
organized. I really
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah, the
The
organization.
name of the website again.
Watermelon.org.
Okay.
Some great recipes. There's some great interviews with some of the watermelon growers, which are very
It talks
interesting.
a little bit about the history, the growing, it's different parts. Like if you go onto the segment called community, that will break it down. If you're a supplier or a retailer, you want to get most from the consumers section. That's where it has the recipes. And it also has how to use the whole watermelon, and it will show you how to cut a watermelon any way you want to, whether it's in sticks or wedges or chunks or balls or whatever. They're really good, and they're really quick little videos, but it's just a great organization to work with.
That's great. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Sheila. And thanks for taking so much time and giving us all this great information. It's been a real delight to have you here today.
Well, it's been fun. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
We love having you here.
Can I mention that Watermelon Day is August the 3rd?
Oh, yes, please do.
Yes,
We'll do that.
I just
This-
did.
Thanks again. I wish you all
Thank
the
y'all.
best.
Thank you.
Cynthia, it was nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Rick and
We
Ed,
love
it's good
you.
to see you
Yeah.
again.
We love you, Sheila. You're just
I
one
love
of
you
our
too, Teresa.
favorite people.
You've been great. You've been a great buddy and friend.
Thanks again, Sheila. And listeners, don't forget to check out watermelon.org for lots of great information on watermelons, how to select, how to store them. Lots of great recipes there, too. We hope your summer is off to a great start. And make sure to include plenty of watermelon in those meals, those picnics, and those campouts. It's so refreshing and so delicious. So until next week, we wish you all the best. Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast, brought to you by Produce Buzz, the gathering place for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. We hope you were entertained a bit and educated a lot about fresh produce. Be sure to join us next time, and please tell your friends to do so as well. Like, share, and comment on our Produce Buzz Facebook page, and check out our website at www.producebuzz.com. There you will find articles about fresh fruits and veggies, how to select, store, and prepare them, as well as lots of interesting facts about all the wonderful bounty the earth provides for us. Until next time, be fruitful and don't forget to veg out.